Imagine facing a professional champion armed to the teeth, with nothing but courage, one stone, and absolutely no combat experience. Yes, on paper, this is a terrible plan. And no, this should not work. The scene opens on two massive armies staring at each other across a valley. One belongs to Israel, the other to the Philistines. Both sides are fully armed, fully trained, and fully prepared to fight. And yet, nothing happens. Days pass, then more days. Every morning, a giant named Goliath steps forward. He is tall, very tall, the kind of tall that makes normal people question their life choices. His armor is heavy, expensive, and extremely intimidating. His confidence is absolute. He doesn't attack. He doesn't rush. He simply talks. He shouts insults. He mocks. He challenges. He offers a deal so simple it almost sounds like it came from a video game tutorial. One fight, he says. Winner takes everything. No armies, no chaos, no complicated strategy. Just one representative from each side. Whoever wins decides the outcome of the war. It's efficient, brutal, and completely humiliating for the side that refuses, which is exactly what happens. The Israeli army, experienced, trained, and armed, does absolutely nothing. They stand there, quietly, every single day. This turns into the ancient version of a meeting that could have been an email. Everyone knows there's a problem. Everyone agrees something should be done. Nobody volunteers to do it. These are professional soldiers, veterans, people who have trained their entire lives for moments exactly like this. And yet, when the moment arrives, initiative mysteriously disappears. They know Goliath is dangerous. They know the odds look bad. And instead of acting, they wait. And wait and wait. Experts in warfare. Beginners in decision-making. Meanwhile, Goliath grows more confident by the day. Why wouldn't he? He shows up, shouts a few insults, and watches an entire army pretend not to exist. From his perspective, this is going great. The imbalance is obvious. Goliath has size, strength, armor, and experience. Israel has hesitation, fear, and a growing sense that maybe this whole single combat idea was a mistake. But the challenge remains on the table, unanswered, hanging in the air. And that's what makes this situation truly unfair. Not because one side is stronger, but because one side is stuck. The battle isn't happening, the war is frozen. Everything depends on someone doing something different. And that's when the story takes a turn no one expects. Because the next person to enter this scene isn't a soldier. He isn't trained for combat, he isn't carrying weapons, he isn't even supposed to be there. He's just delivering food. And somehow, that changes everything. David does not arrive like a hero. He doesn't march in with a sword. He doesn't wear armor. He doesn't come with dramatic music or slow-motion confidence. David arrives carrying food. That's it. Bread, supplies, lunch for his older brothers, who are actually part of the army. He's there on an errand. Drop the food. Say hello. Go home. From the start, he feels out of place. David is young. Not battle-hardened young, but why is he even here? Young. He's not enlisted. He has no military rank, no weapons, no reputation. In a camp full of soldiers, he's background noise, which means no one is paying attention to him until he starts paying attention to everything else. David hears the shouting, the same voice everyone else has learned to ignore. Goliath steps forward again, delivering the same challenge, the same insults, the same confidence. And this time David listens, really listens. He looks around, expecting someone, anyone, to respond, to move, to do something. Instead, he sees silence, awkward silence, professional silence, the kind of silence people use when they're hoping a problem solves itself. So David asks a question, not a heroic speech, not a rallying cry, just a question. Why hasn't anyone fought him yet? The reaction is immediate. Heads turn, faces tighten. The looks he gets all say the same thing, you don't get it. This isn't curiosity, it's confusion. To everyone else, the situation is obvious. The giant is unbeatable. The risk is too high. The cost is unacceptable. David doesn't see that. To him, it's like an intern walking into a crisis meeting and casually asking why the obvious problem is still unsolved. No fear, no hesitation, just logic. And that makes people uncomfortable, because questions are dangerous when everyone else has already accepted the problem as permanent. David keeps talking, he keeps asking, and the more he asks, the more irritated people become, especially his older brother. The brother steps in quickly, firmly, annoyed. He tells David to stop, to mind his business, to remember his place. This is grown-up business, war business, adult responsibility. In other words, authority based entirely on age. The message is clear. You're younger. You don't belong here. Go back to doing what you were told. David listens, but he doesn't retreat. Because while everyone else is focused on how big the problem is, David is focused on something else entirely. He notices the pattern, the repetition, the fact that the challenge has been happening for days without consequence. He sees that fear, not strength, is running the situation. To the army, Goliath is a giant problem. To David, he's an unanswered one. And that difference matters, because while everyone else sees size, David sees opportunity. And that's when the impossible idea begins to take shape. The moment David says he's willing to fight, the atmosphere changes. Conversations stop. Movements freeze. A few people assume they misheard him. Then comes silence. Not the calm kind, the confused kind. When the realization settles in, disbelief takes over. Soldiers stare. Commanders exchange looks. This is not bravery. This is something else. David? Fighting the giant? It's like someone volunteering for an impossible challenge without reading the instructions, the warning labels, or the part that says, "This will absolutely not end well." Still, desperation has a way of lowering standards. Eventually, David is brought before the leadership. They look him over carefully, hoping they missed something, a hidden skill, a secret qualification, anything. They find none. So they do the next logical thing. They try to turn him into someone else. Armor is brought in. Heavy armor, professional armor. The kind designed for experienced soldiers who know how to move inside it. They place it on David piece by piece. Helmet, chest plate, weapons. At first it seems promising. He looks more official, more serious. Then he tries to walk. It's a disaster. David takes a step, then another. His movement is slow, awkward, completely unnatural. The armor drags him down. His balance is gone. His speed disappears. Protection, maximum. Mobility, zero. He looks safe. He also looks like he's about to fall over. The armor does exactly what it's supposed to do, if you're built for it. David isn't. After a few painful attempts to move like a soldier, David stops. This isn't going to work. So he does something that makes everyone even more uncomfortable. He says no. He removes the armor. All of it. Hands it back. Calmly, politely. No upgrades, no reinforcements, no backup plan. Instead, he chooses what he knows. A sling, a few smooth stones. Nothing impressive, nothing shiny. Nothing that looks remotely adequate for fighting a giant in full armor. But it's light, familiar, functional. This is where the logic finally becomes clear. David isn't trying to match Goliath's strength. He's refusing to play Goliath's game. Everyone else sees the mismatch and tries to fix it by adding more protection, more weight, more complexity. David does the opposite. He simplifies. Not every solution needs to be bigger. Some need to be correct. This isn't recklessness, it's alignment. David chooses tools that fit him, not the situation everyone else is afraid of. The crowd doesn't cheer. No one celebrates the choice. There's no reassurance, just quiet concern, because now there's no excuse left, no armor to blame, no backup strategy, no delay. David steps forward exactly as he is, and once he does, there's no turning back. The giant advances. Total confidence, absolute certainty, the kind of confidence that comes from never being challenged before. Goliath walks forward like this is already over, because in his mind, it is. He laughs, he insults, he talks. A lot. From his perspective, this is almost insulting. He expected a warrior, a champion, someone worth the effort. Instead, he's facing a young guy with no armor and what looks like camping equipment. It's the classic mistake. Underestimating someone, Because they don't look dangerous. Goliath assumes size alone decides the outcome. Experience too, strength, equipment, the visible things. He doesn't consider speed or distance, or the possibility that the rules he's used to might not apply. While Goliath is talking, David is moving. He doesn't stop to argue, he doesn't trade insults, he doesn't wait for permission. The moment the giant finishes mocking him, David runs forward. That alone is unexpected. Giants expect hesitation, they expect fear. They do not expect someone to sprint directly toward them. As David runs, the sling begins to spin. One smooth motion, practiced, familiar, no hesitation, no overthinking, one stone, released. And then, silence. No dramatic exchange. No prolonged struggle. No back and forth battle. Just a brief moment where everything pauses. The stone strikes its target. Goliath stops. The giant falls. The impossible happens so quickly that it takes a second for anyone to process it. Soldiers on both sides stare, unsure of what they just witnessed. The outcome arrives before expectations can adjust. The fight ends before it truly begins. The giant, built for long battles and overwhelming force, is defeated by speed, precision, and timing. His size, once his greatest advantage, becomes his weakness. The larger the target, the easier it is to hit. That's the irony. All the preparation, all the intimidation, all the confidence. Defeated by a single, well-executed action, excessive planning loses to simple execution. The battlefield shifts instantly. Fear changes sides. Momentum flips. What looked like an unbeatable situation collapses in seconds. David stands there, calm, still, exactly where he planned to be. And the armies finally understand what just happened. This was never about strength matching strength. It was about approach. One side relied on intimidation and tradition. The other relied on movement and clarity. And once the giant falls, everything else follows. The silence breaks. The balance breaks. The entire situation transforms. Because when the biggest obstacle disappears, all the hesitation behind it disappears too. And in a matter of seconds, the story changes direction completely. The fight was never fair, but not for the reason everyone assumed. From the outside, it looked like a classic imbalance. Two armies frozen in place, one giant overflowing with confidence, one ignored kid stepping forward, an outcome no one predicted. But when the dust settles, the pattern becomes obvious. The armies were stuck long before the stone was thrown. They had strength, numbers, and experience, but no movement. The giant had size, armor, and reputation, but no flexibility. And David, small, underestimated, and overlooked, had something else entirely. Clarity, that's what made the difference. Unfair battles still happen all the time, not just on battlefields, but in offices, schools, projects, and everyday life. Situations where one side looks overwhelmingly powerful, and the other looks unqualified, unprepared, or completely outmatched. And most people assume the same thing. The bigger side will win. But appearances are unreliable. Strength doesn't always mean readiness. Size doesn't guarantee adaptability. Experience can turn into rigidity faster than anyone expects. Goliath was prepared for the kind of fight he had always won. He was not prepared for a different kind of problem. David didn't win by being stronger. He won by refusing to compete on the wrong terms. It's like defeating someone bigger by changing the rules instead of raising your voice. Like winning with strategy instead of volume. Like realizing that adding more weight to the problem doesn't help if it slows you down. That's the part people often miss. Everyone focused on the size difference. Almost no one noticed the mindset difference. The giant assumed dominance was enough. The army assumed waiting was safer than acting. David assumed the situation could change if someone moved first, and that assumption rewrote the outcome. This story keeps working generation after generation because people keep making the same mistake. They confuse force with advantage. They confuse intimidation with control. They confuse looking prepared with actually being prepared. David didn't bring more. He brought what fit. And that's why the victory feels surprising but not random. Once you see it, the ending makes sense. The fight was unfair, but in favor of the one who understood the problem. And no, it still shouldn't work. But it does. So now the question shifts to the viewer. Which confrontation should be simplified next? Samson versus the Philistines, Elijah versus the prophets, or Daniel versus the lions?